Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. My name is Bill Horan, and today I'm here with my co-host, Nassau Community College student Zac Turkel. Today we'll be talking about an organization that is helping the community in more ways than one.
Absolutely, Bill. Let's introduce the Crime Victim Center that helps the prevention and treatment of child sexual abuse and rape.
And joining us today is Laura Ahearn, an attorney in private practice and the executive director of the Crime Victim Center at Parents for Megan's Law. Laura, welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Well, thanks for having me, Bill and Zac. I'm glad to be here.
We want to get a lot of information from you, but let's start right, at the first step. What is the Crime Victim Center at the Parents for Megan's Law, and what is its purpose?
The Crime Victim Center is a not-for-profit organization, and we have a three-pronged approach to crime prevention, and it's the provision of prevention education programs for students as young as preschool all the way up through 12th grade, college students, and adults, so that's sexual abuse prevention education programs. The second unit of the organization is Crime Victim Services. So we provide crime victim support services to all victims of violent crime. Specifically, the organization was, in their earlier years, focused on just child sex abuse victims, then adult sexual assault victims. Now it's all victims of violent crime, including victims of domestic violence, gang violence, every type of crime, homicide. We are there, our advocates are there to provide support services to community members. And the third component of the organization is the Megan's Law programs. And those are programs that are designed to provide community support to individuals who have questions about accessing information under Megan's Law, and also to ensure that that information is used properly, and also to ensure that the law enforcement agencies have the support they need in the community to be able to ensure that that sex offender registry is up to date and accurate. So in sum, it's three units to prevent crime, and that's prevention education, victim services, and Megan's Law community and law enforcement services.
Now, Laura, you're the perfect person as an attorney to ask this. We often hear the term Megan's Law, but can you tell us what that really is?
Sure. Megan's Law is a law that is named after a young girl from New Jersey, Megan Kanka, who was brutally raped and murdered by a convicted sex offender who lived across the street from her home with other sex offenders. Now, at the time, law enforcement was actually authorized under federal law to release information to the community, but there were really no mechanisms across the country to make that happen. So what happened is Megan's Law on a federal level amended a law called the Jacob Wetterling Act, and that was a law that allowed registration to happen for sex offenders. So what Megan's Law does for New York State and across the country is it gives law enforcement the ability to register sex offenders, states actually, to register sex offenders, and those are individuals that are convicted of crimes against children and adults, not just children, and then they have to stay on a registry for a certain period of time. So if an offender is deemed to be a high risk, they stay on the registry for life. If an offender is a moderate risk, it's lifetime, but they can petition to come off in 30 years. And if it's an offender deemed to be a low risk, it's a 20-year registration period. So what's important about registration is that people in the community are given an opportunity to know about those individuals who the government has already determined pose a risk to public safety. So those are individuals that people want to know information that can help them make decisions about who they want their children to hang around with and who they want to have relationships with.
Very informative. I've already learned a lot. I feel like I just had a TED Talk. Thank you, because I've heard it, but I really didn't know. If someone said to describe it or what's included, I really couldn't.
And I loved it how you described it in like less than a couple of minutes.
That's right.
That's great. It would take a long time for that to happen. And when did the Crime Victim Center at Parents for Megan's Law begin?
The agency actually started about 25 years ago or so, and it actually started in a room in my home.
Oh.
And yeah, it was really a result of, there was a frustration that I had and community members had where we saw that law enforcement was not releasing information that we knew we were somehow entitled to, but we didn't know what we were entitled to. So I started going on this journey across the nation to find out what was wrong with our own Megan's Law in New York State, only to find that there were sort of legal challenges that were preventing law enforcement from releasing information on most offenders, but not all. So just there was decisions made not to release any information. So over time, we developed really strong working relationships with law enforcement, specifically on Long Island and across New York State and really across the country, because we have programs in our sex offender management unit of the organization. We implement what's called the Community Protection Act in Suffolk County, and that's a law that County Executive Ballone passed that gave that created a partnership between local law enforcement and the organization, where we hired and have on staff retired NYPD law enforcement officers, and they actually go door to door and verify the information that registered sex offenders have provided to the state to ensure the registry is up to date and accurate. And what we do in Nassau, similarly, is we work very closely with their law enforcement folks who are really proactive, and any kind of anomaly in registration, meaning somebody calls us on our tip line and says, hey, we know that this sex offender doesn't live in that house because we know his girlfriend and the victim of the mother of the victim for who the offender targeted. We know her, and she says he lives here. So really what happened is sort of the community became the eyes and the ears for law enforcement. So we get tips all the time, and our retired law enforcement folks triage those tips. And if there is an anomaly or an inconsistency, we work directly with law enforcement and we provide that information to them, and they investigate it. And then they will either make an arrest or they'll correct the registry. So it keeps the registry up to date and accurate and maintains its efficacy, because we are entitled under the law to have certain information to be able to make decisions about who we want to have relationships with. That's the idea of Megan's Law. So we work very closely with law enforcement here in Nassau and in Suffolk, and also we work nationally with the U.S. Marshals. So when we have an offender who goes over state lines and we get that information, we then pass it off to the marshals, and they then will track down that offender, and it's a federal felony to fail to register and cross over state lines.
Wow, that's very interesting. And before I ask my second question, Laura, I just want to let our listeners know that you are listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Zac Turkel, along with Bill Horan, and today we're talking about the Crime Victim Center at Parents for Megan's Law with their executive director, Laura Ahearn, who is also a private practicing attorney. And Laura, we all hear in the news about the Rockville Center Archdiocese with the sexual assault happening, the abuse. How widespread is this on Long Island, the sexual assault on Long Island? Is it widespread, or is it just small clusters?
I think it's absolutely widespread. Mm-hmm. The sexual victimization of children by priests and the systematic cover-up of those crimes over the years has put adult men, in positions now where they're being given an opportunity to participate in settlement programs with the diocese, or under the new change in law under the Child Victims Act, they're being given an opportunity beginning in August to bring a claim. So what happened is, in New York State, the statute of limitations is going to be temporarily lifted for a 1-year period. So no matter when you were sexually victimized, the oldest client that I ever dealt with at this point is 87, and it was at the time, there was a split between Rockville Center, and it was actually the Brooklyn Diocese on Long Island handled everything. So there was no Rockville Center Diocese, and that split around 56. So I've had numerous cases of adult men as old as 87, as 80, in their 80s that were victimized when they were altar boys. Uh-huh. And that was, back then, priests were revered, and no one would ever question a priest. So there was really a lot of fear on the part of victims at the time, especially if it was boys, to come forward. But now the Rockville Center Diocese, along with Brooklyn, New York Archdiocese, Syracuse, Ogdensburg, all the dioceses across New York State, including Buffalo, opened up settlement programs to offer folks an opportunity to bring claims without having to go to court. So, and those claims are actually heard by the administrator, who is Ken Feinberg, who does the 9/11 fund. So it's an opportunity for individuals who were sexually abused as children to settle the claim, and victims don't have to maintain any type of confidentiality. A victim can talk about the sexual victimization, their claim, the amount they got, the priest. There's no requirement for secrecy at all. However, a victim can request that confidentiality of the diocese. So the diocese was prohibited from saying the victim's name, any amount of money, even that there was a claim filed. But a victim can certainly say whatever they want. So it's been a great program for a lot of folks, but there are also other folks who didn't want to be part of those programs and instead are going to bring claims under Child Victims Act. And I have plenty of those folks I'm working with.
Laura, this is obviously so important. Tell us and tell our audience, if someone is hearing this and say, this is being said right to me, meaning they're a victim or it's something that's in their life, how do they get in touch with you?
So if they're individuals, because I have a double role, so I'm at this point I'm the executive director of the Crime Victim Center, but also am a private practice attorney. So if somebody is looking for victim support services, meaning no-cost counseling, crisis intervention, criminal justice advocacy, family court advocacy, they can certainly contact the Crime Victim Center, and they can reach us through our website, www.crimevictimcenter.org, or call us at 631-689-2672 for direct services. So if they want victim support services, and they can also contact, if they're Nassau County and they want to work more locally in Nassau, the Safe Center is in Nassau County. It's a great organization. They can work with them for victim support services. However, if they want to bring a civil claim, they certainly can call me in my private practice, and it's at lauraahearn.com. So they're able to reach me via email or phone. It depends on the direction that somebody wants to go to. But now's the time, because after the Me Too movement, it's made it much more safer for folks to come forward. And it's not just about sexual harassment of women, but it's about men being given an opportunity for the first time to come forward. And it's more like I say to all my male clients, who range from firefighters, law enforcement, detectives, lieutenants, vice presidents, presidents of companies, folks that are professionals, guys in labor unions, you name it. I have that type of a male client that I'm working with. And I say to them, it's time for them. So it's hashtag Men Too now, not just Me Too. It's a lot of men now are free to come forward and to talk about the injustice they experienced as children.
Now, Laura, you mentioned before, but now that we have a little clearer idea about Megan's Law, would you take us quickly through the three-pronged approach? Just tell us what those three prongs are.
Sure. The organization, the Crime Victim Center, also known as Parents for Megan's Law, we take a three-pronged approach to crime prevention. Number one, prevention education is critical because, children, if they're empowered and they have an understanding that they have a right to say no, that when somebody wants to try to touch them in an area that makes them uncomfortable, that they can say no, that they don't have to be polite. So the younger programs that we have as an organization, we have now 22 different prevention education programs that we offer in both Nassau and Suffolk County directly in schools. I think we're upward around 190,000 children and their parents in Nassau and Suffolk County schools, community organizations, and libraries. So we do programs pre-K all the way up through 12th grade. We do college students specifically, and also we do parent education and professionals who work with children. So it's really important to understand that sexual abuse begins with the violation of a boundary. So a limit is pushed. So when a parent is being questioned by an individual like a coach or a teacher or a priest or a professional, when that person is trying to offer a little too much help in your life, you really need to pay attention to that, because no one should be spending more time with your children alone than you as a parent.
Laura,
so parents are the first line of defense, and that's really critical, and we teach that prevention education in programs.
We have a lot of questions because this is more and more interesting as you educate us, but at this point in the show, we're going to take a quick quick break. My name is Bill Horan. I'm here with Zac Turkel, and today we're talking about the Crime Victim Center at Parents for Megan's Law with their executive director, Laura Ahearn, who is a private attorney in private practice as well as the executive director. You're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
As humans, we ask ourselves all kinds of questions. But what if we were forced to ask ourselves a question every day that affected the outcome of the most basic things, the most important things in our lives? The question is, what is your sexual orientation or gender identity? And the answer is the difference between keeping your job or getting fired. The answer is the difference between staying in your home or getting evicted. The answer is the difference between receiving medical treatment or not. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against people based on their answer to this question. LGBT Americans have the right to say I do, but they don't have the same basic rights as everyone else. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
And now we return to My Hometown.
Thanks for being with us here today on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill Horan. I'm here with Zac Turkel, and today we're talking about the Crime Victim Center at Parents for Megan's Law with their executive director, Laura Ahearn. Laura, when do you think is the right time, or meaning the right age, to educate young girls and boys about this topic?
We actually start educating children when they're in preschool, and we teach them about their bathing suit areas, that those are areas that are private, and that if anybody tries to touch their bathing suit area, they need to tell somebody like mom or dad. So it starts as young as that, and believe it or not, it does start even with parents, even when they're younger. And this is what we do in our prevention education programs for adults. We start teaching adults how to protect their children when their children are babies. So when you have a baby that needs to be diapered, you should be doing that diapering in a private area, not on the living room floor in front of family at gatherings, which people do because it's more convenient, but they're also sending a message to babies that it's okay for everyone else to see their private areas. And when you do the kind of work that we do, we know, look, sex offenders and those who target children work really hard at developing trusting relationships with families and with children with an aim to sexually victimize them. And those relationships can be with somebody in a position of trust, like a priest, a coach, a teacher, or it could be somebody like your neighbor or even a family member. So it's more about helping children to understand the circumstances that might make them feel uncomfortable and how to respond to those circumstances. So stranger danger is outdated and it's misleading to children. So it's not going to be sort of a ghoul in a tree who's going to sexually victimize a child. It's going to be somebody who looks just like you and me, and you could never tell. So if you look around at the sexual predators that are arrested, it's everybody that looks just like you and me. So the way to tell that something's not right is when somebody is trying to get your child alone or to take over some of the role that you have as a parent. So when someone, in the name of our adult prevention education program is Apple of My Eye, and the Apple of My Eye program teaches parents that nobody should be the apple of your child's eye except for you're the one who should make your child the apple of your eye. So that program is available actually at no cost online in our online classroom. Folks can go right to parentsmeganslaw.org or crimevictimcenter.org and go to our online classroom, and it's a little over an hour, and it's the adult prevention education program. It's the first time in the country that you can get a free, complete prevention education program that includes information about Megan's Law as well.
Laura, before Zac, I know he's chomping at the bit with a question, but I want our audience to know, in case they're wondering, we're talking to Laura Ahearn. She's the executive director of the Crime Victim Center at the Parents for Megan's Law, and you're also a private attorney. We're going to ask Laura to give you all the contact information. So if you're hearing this and saying, oh, I wish I wrote that down before, we'll give it to you again in a few minutes. Get the pencil and paper handy. For sure, tomorrow or the next day, you'll wish you did that. Zac?
Yeah, and I was looking at the topics, and can you tell us more about the Staying Safe Enough is Enough program?
Sure. The Staying Safe Enough is Enough program is a New York State initiative. It's actually the Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul, has been the one who's implementing this program. And a couple of years back, there were some stats that came out that indicated that 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 16 boys were going to be sexually victimized when they went to college. So that's pretty scary. So what happened is New York State started to fund programs across the state to provide prevention education to colleges and universities. So the organization does just that, and we work with lots of colleges and universities, and our educators go into the schools and help the colleges and universities actually comply with their educational requirements. So there were some changes also that were made, like requirements that schools have amnesty policies. So if you wanted to report a sexual assault, or if you wanted to report stalking or dating violence or domestic violence, that if you were in a circumstance where there was some substances that were present, that were happening at that gathering or party, you were not going to be punished for reporting, even though you might have been in that circumstance. So there were some changes to student policies as well to make it easier to report. And I think that we're starting to see remarkable changes on college campuses because, look, it's just not going to stop. If folks are going to be drinking in college, that's just going to happen. But what can change is that we can learn that consent is affirmative now on college campuses, meaning it's not just enough to think that somebody wants to be involved. You have to have an affirmative answer. So that changed as well. So now I think across the country there's going to be some changes because of some federal pressure, but we're going to leave that up to the politicians to deal with that.
All right, I just want to let our listeners know again that you are listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Zac Turkel, along with Bill Horan, and today we're talking about the Crime Victim Center at Parents for Megan's Law with their executive director, Laura Ahearn, who is also a private practicing attorney.
Laura, if someone is hearing this, it doesn't seem like there's any middle ground. You're either the good guys or the bad guys. If someone wants to be a volunteer or offer to help out, A, is that possible in this area? And two, or B, what specific training would a candidate go through, or do they have to come in as a nurse, a doctor, or an attorney?
So we do have volunteers that work at the organization, and they will go through a training program, and they can contact the agency, again, at 631-689-2672 or directly through our website. We do have volunteers who help out, especially we have some big events that are coming up. We have a walkathon that's going to be coming, and also a gala in December, and every year we do some pretty major events during Sexual Assault Awareness Month. But one of the things that I also wanted listeners to be aware of is we're the ones contracted in both Nassau and Suffolk to make a registry available of all sex offenders, no matter what the risk level is, level 1, level 2, and level 3. So the state sex offender registry only includes level 2 and 3, but we're contracted by Nassau Police and Suffolk Police to maintain a registry of all of the offenders that they release information on. So that would include level 1 offenders who are deemed to pose a low risk to public safety. And folks can register on the website for free and receive email alerts anytime an offender moves in or out of their community. And they can register as many zip codes as they want. So if they're living in Nassau and they have a child care, and they work in Suffolk and they have child care in Suffolk, they can register the zip code around where their child care is or where grandma and grandpa live, and they can get alerts anytime a registered sex offender moves in or out, or they can search the sex offender registry for their community, and they can even call the helpline if they want information about a particular offender, or if they want to report an offender, say that they're aware that an offender is on Facebook, because Facebook does not allow convicted sex offenders to maintain a profile. So if they have information that a particular registrant is on Facebook, and they give that to us, we notify Facebook, and Facebook will take it down, or the community member can notify Facebook directly.
And Laura, as you said before, and I'm just echoing it, these people look like you and me. They're not bad with a tail or horns or a mustache necessarily. And they may be working next to us. They may be our mailman, our neighbor, or a member of the clergy or a religious person. So we can't say that, it wouldn't be him or her. It very well may be. So you're listening to an expert today, Laura Ahearn, about this. And if you want to know more, just follow her directions and get involved in one of these programs.
Yeah, and I was also looking at that professional development is very important in these sensitive cases. What does it... Oh, I already mentioned that. Sorry about that. The Crime Victim Centers around prevention, education, and services for the victims. Are these services that... Are there any services that cater to the parents, and are there specific informational sessions, prevention, education, counseling services for the parents?
Sure. And that's a really good question because when a child is sexually victimized, the family goes into crisis. So family members are entitled to free counseling. And also there's something else that a lot of folks aren't aware of. If you're a victim of a violent crime and a victim of domestic violence, a victim of an assault. Let's say you as an adult man, you're walking into a convenience store and somebody who is inebriated punches you in the nose for no reason at all. So you're an innocent victim of a crime. Or you're on a soccer field and some guy, who's unhappy punches you in the nose. Or you're in a club with your friends and somebody assaults you. Whatever the circumstances are, if you're a victim of violent crime, you're entitled to reimbursement for all of your expenses related to that crime, including counseling. So if your insurance does not cover you, or if you have an overage, or let's say you have no insurance, or if you're undocumented and you're a victim of violent crime, you're entitled to reimbursement for all your expenses related to the crime. So if you have no insurance and you're at a hospital and you have a $50,000 hospital bill and you're an innocent victim of a crime, we help to facilitate the return of that money to pay for those bills from the State Crime Victims Fund, which that money comes from federal asset forfeiture funds and also from fines that are levied on offenders in court. So we get those expenses paid for you.
Laura, I think you just caught everybody's interest when you said get expenses paid. So before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you if you'd very slowly go through the key information, where you're located, the phone number, and if there's a website or an email we should know about.
Sure. The Crime Victim Center, also known as Parents for Megan's Law, has its headquarters in Ronkonkoma. We have another office in Patchogue, but we do staff the National Megan's Law Helpline. So you can contact us at any time, 631-689-2672. You can go through our website at www.crimevictimcenter.org, or if it's easier to remember, parentsformeganslaw.org. And we have a website that will give you access to the Sex Offender Registry, give you access to individuals that can help you if you become a victim of a crime, and also if you'd like to do a prevention education program in your school, your library, your community organization, just give us a call.
And to our audience, you can also go to nccradio.org and listen to a podcast. So if you want other members of your town, community, family, religious group to hear this, go to nccradio.org and look for Laura Ahearn. Laura, we want to thank you for being with us today, and we want to remind our audience that our guest has been Laura Ahearn, the Executive Director of the Crime Victim Center at Parents for Megan's Law, and she's also an attorney. Laura, thanks so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I'm Bill Horan. I'm here with Zac Turkel. We thank you for listening to this week's edition of My Hometown.
We like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC at ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.